This is the Persistence of Vision podcast. Welcome in to Persistence of Vision, where each month I sit down with a creative professional in film, video production, and we talk about their career experiences and the lessons they've learned along the way, especially when things didn't quite go the way they had expected. I'm Clint Till, so thankful that you decided to join for another episode here, and I have a great guest that I met through X. Her name is Heidi Hornbacher, and she is a longtime screenwriter, producer, filmmaker. She is the co-founder of Pagecraft Writing. She's also the co-founder of the Slam Dance Script Clinic. She is in Los Angeles. She has a background in screenwriting from UCLA. She has done so much in her career and has written so many screenplays and has a wealth of industry experience. And I'm super, super fortunate that she responded to my inquiry on X to see if she'd like to join me on this episode. And she was gracious enough to say yes and give me some of her time. So without further ado, here's my conversation with writer, director, producer, filmmaker, all-around awesome person, Heidi Hornbacher. First of all, thank you for being on here.
My pleasure.
And I wanted to just give everyone a chance when they come on just to introduce themselves. Like, how would you introduce yourself professionally to someone if you're meeting and greeting somebody at like a networking event?
Well, I would definitely say hi. I'm Heidi from Pagecraft. I am a longtime writer. I've been a director and a producer for a long time. But I also founded Pagecraft with my husband in 2008. And, really with that, like I've made so many mistakes getting where I am, both, in writing and in the business of writing. And so our whole thing was, it shouldn't be that hard. I was working for years as a reader for contests, and I'm seeing the same mistakes over and over again. And we both went to UCLA, my husband and I. So we're like, we all like, why are people making these mistakes? Why are we still making these mistakes? And so the more we learned, we're like, we should be able to turn around and tell and help people not make the same mistakes we've been making. And I see people making all the time. So I co-founded the Slam Dance Script Clinic and work with a lot of writers there. And then, just really, we developed our curriculum for Pagecraft out of helping people avoid those mistakes in the first place, getting the draft right in the first place, and, doing all the structural and character work you need to do in the first place, which we then take and do in all of our own work. So, makes me a better writer, makes me a better teacher.
So for those that don't know, tell us what Pagecraft is and what you're doing there.
Yeah, thanks. So Pagecraft, like I said, we founded in 2008. We started by just taking groups of writers to Italy every year for a 2-week retreat. And that was amazing. And then we thought, this is a really dumb business model because you have one thing once a year. That's not a thing. So we turned all of our curriculum into online sessions, workshops. So now we have always 10-week sessions, 8-week sessions running all the time online. And then, of course, you don't just need to write the first script. You really need to rewrite and, take apart what you wrote, figure out why you're getting that note about the second act every time. We give you the tools to figure out, well, how do I get to the bottom of that note? And how do I address it successfully? Really helping people decode what their notes are and helping them get to the next level with their writing. So now we have a rewrite curriculum. We have a rewrite lab that we do in Northern California once a year. So we do still have our big fancy in-person things in each once a year, but we have online stuff all the time. And we're just working with writers all the time on a one-off consultation basis, and then our workshops and classes.
So with Italy, I'm just curious because when you said Italy, I was like, how can I,
You're
where
like,
do I sign?
Yep.
Yeah, let me get my wallet out. So why Italy? Is this a chance to kind of do a work plus relaxation and have some fun too?
Italy?
Yeah, I was like, why not Italy? But I'm just curious.
So my husband is Italian. That's part of it. I had done junior year abroad in Italy, so I've been obsessed for many decades. And it just sort of like, it was an easy sell of like, hey, professor, let's take some writers with us for a villa for 2 weeks and like chill out with some wine and gelato. And it was like, yeah. And so people signed up really fast. And after a while, we were like, this is a good business thing. We need to do this. And so we're both very bonded to Italy. Because of my husband, I now have dual citizenship too. So we both have a lot of ties there. And it just, there's something, there's so many special, beautiful places in the world, but there is something about Italy. There's a magic there. I just feel like it inspires creativity. You're around some of the amazing artworks of humanity, and they're just everywhere. And so it's just like everyone is doing something creative and fun. The focus on life there is more about your creativity and your art. It's less about, did you make $1 today? And so I just feel like that vibe and just being in a beautiful place with people who are all focused on doing the same thing you're focused on doing, it makes all the difference. And people come up with, they pump out great work when we're together.
So you mentioned earlier that from your experiences, you made some mistakes, in your own writing as you're thinking about, oh, how can I kind of help others? So what were there anything specific that you can think of, like mistakes in your own writing, like as you're first learning, that you're then taking and applying as lessons for the folks that you work with now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people tend to be one of two minds. They either come to story from a place of the character's inner journey, or they come to story from a place of stuff that happens. And it's like the character, so it's more of the character's external journey. And realizing, when a really important part of my evolution as a writer was realizing neither is better or worse than the other, and you need both. So having a more fully fleshed out story from both sides, I think, was probably among some of my earlier mistakes. And once I figured out how to address that's made things a lot easier. Let's see what else. Overwriting. Everybody overwrites at the beginning. I mean, I don't know that some of us ever stop overwriting. It's just great. Overwrite your first draft. Awesome. Get it all. I say, get the clay on the table. You'll carve it out beautiful later. So it's overwrite the first time, but then develop that wherewithal to understand where you need to carve and how you need to trim. I definitely can see in the early scripts I wasn't willing to let stuff go as much, and I didn't understand structure as much. So now, having both of those things, when you know how to get a better foundation in place, and then like when to fight your battles and when to go, you know what, actually let me try it that way. And I think that's the big part, is the facility to just say, let me, even if I think your note is terrible, let me try it. And because now I understand, even if a note makes me mad or like I think it's dumb, it could unlock something for me if I'm just willing to play. So I think having a sense of play, and it's like, guys, this isn't rocket science. We get to make up crap all day long, and it's like, we just get to make stuff up. It's play, so if you come at it with a little lighter touch, you can open up stuff that you didn't see before.
For me personally, and I'm sure you've experienced this when you talk to other writers in your workshops, is that just the process, the thought process of rewriting for me is so daunting, because
Yeah.
I feel like I've poured everything mentally out onto the page on the first draft,
Yeah.
and I come away kind of feeling a bit spent, as if to say I don't have any more ideas. Like everything I
Mm-hmm.
thought of is there on the page. I'm just curious, like, do other writers that you work with experience that same thing? And if so, like,
Absolutely.
what do
Yeah.
you tell them as part of that rewrite process?
So the main thing about the rewriting process is checking your structure, making sure things are actually there in where they need to be, serving the story. And then that's the sort of the key part, is what serves the story. And you can let go of a lot more stuff, and you can, most importantly, you've put everything on the page. You got all the ideas out. Now can you make it more beautiful? So a lot of times it starts to be a thing about, okay, if this is what they feel, and I've said what they feel, and they say what they feel. Now, humans don't necessarily talk that way. We talk around our feelings. So, how can I keep that emotional content of the scene, but they can't say these words? And so, it's about like pushing that into the subtext, but still figuring out how to get the feelings and the emotions across. To me, that's when you're leveling up to like the real art, is like, okay, yeah, they're super angry at their friend for doing this to them, but they can't say it. What are they going to say, and what are they going to do instead? So it's like taking your writing to the next level is like, yeah, it is. You got all the ideas out. Now, how do you make those ideas more how we actually operate as humans? Because we never say what we mean.
Let me back up a little bit, because I'm always curious to hear about how people get in love with the filmmaking process.
Mm.
And so I'm kind of curious, like personally speaking, your background, how you got into this, and kind of what things you have written. And because I know I could go through your bio. I know you've got a lot of stuff that you've written. You've produced some things. So, but I just want to let you tell us about it.
Sure. I think, like so many of us, I fell in love with just the story on screen, whether it was TV or movies, at a really young age. But I always assumed that I couldn't do that. Like I wasn't allowed to do that somehow. And it wasn't until, I finally was just like, wait a minute, who is the great permission giver? Like what am I waiting for? Or why did I assume that because some teacher when I was younger didn't point at me and go, you should go over there? Like I, I don't know what I was waiting for, but I think a lot of us have that kind of like, well, do I need permission? Am I supposed to be tapped and told I'm good enough to do that thing? So when I finally decided to move back here to LA and go to UCLA and get that, get a screenwriting degree and just like really dive in. So I did that. And then, after I did all the, like, I wrote all the things and I entered all the contests, and then I sort of sat back because a bunch of our mentors at UCLA were just like, don't worry, the cream will rise to the top. Like, you don't have to worry. If you're writing undeniable scripts, they'll rise to the top. Okay, but how? Like, they never sort of bridged that, like, but then how do people know that I've written this amazing script? Like, if they're not doing anything, and they never really touched on that. So I finally just kind of had some really great friends that were like, well, let's just go start making stuff. Let's assume that we can. And we had it started with music videos, which I think it does so often for directors and producers. Like, I had a bunch of friends in bands, and we're like, well, what if we make a music video? And like, so we did that for several years. We cut our teeth on making a whole bunch of music videos for a bunch of different bands on shoestring budgets, got really good at wearing all the hats, and just really getting production streamlined. And so, to the point where we started winning advertising campaigns, and like, so we actually moved from music video to commercials, and then started doing documentary. And just, it's like just realizing that if you can just figure out how to do it yourself, and someone will eventually pay you for it. So that was really kind of how we got into all of the production side stuff, which I think everybody, you try to do something, so you have to force yourself to wear all the hats at some point, and you have such a better understanding of everything that goes into all aspects of production. Like when they say, like, every actor should take a directing and a filmmaking class, and every filmmaker should take an acting and a directing class, or whatever, like we should all learn each other's disciplines because it helps.
Yeah, so for the podcast episode that just released last month, I actually talked at length with a costume designer that I
Oh,
know
cool.
and we were talking about that exact same thing in regards to not being an expert, of course, in what everybody else does, but just learning a little bit about
Yeah.
what each person does on set. So you have a greater appreciation for it. You also are a better communicator and can kind of better, bring everybody into your own vision.
Yeah.
You said that you just kind of didn't wait for permission. You just went and did it and kind of figured
Yeah.
things out. So, kind of through that experience, what was either the biggest eye-opening moment for you when you kind of were thinking to yourself, "Oh, okay, now I know how this works," whether it was from a mistake that was made or whatever that might be, or maybe someone's advice, although well-intentioned, maybe didn't turn out the way you had thought it would, or
Mm.
something maybe early on that you kind of thought to yourself, "Oh," kind of like the blinds are up and you kind of see this industry, this world for how it really is, that kind of taught you something.
Gosh, I mean, what comes to mind is just nobody knows anything, and there's no one path. Like, it just we were able, because we were friends with somebody who ran a thing, to go in and say, yeah, we can make an ad for you, because they don't know. So you can, if you have a basic, like, not like you're going to lie and not be able to actually deliver what you're saying, but you understand story in a way that they don't even know they need. And so I feel like, if that's kind of what it was for me, is just going in and, like, when we first transitioned to this big, we had a campaign for a credit union out here. So it's local, it's going to be regional ads and, like, not national ads, but they wanted like 15 ads. And so we were like, on one hand, like, oh my God, what do we do? But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, we can just come up with a bunch of stories about banks. And and we did, and we just came up with a bunch of stuff and like went in there with confidence, and we're like, here's the story we think you should tell about why people should join your credit union. And they loved it, and they were just like, great, do that, one, that one, that one, that one. We were like, okay. And at that point we just sort of figured out like, okay, well, if we can set a couple of these production days up in a certain way, it'll save them money because then we can shoot more than one thing at a time. And like, just like all the stuff that now that I speak with like assistant directors and line producers, is like, yeah, that's the stuff they do. So I didn't realize I was doing that. And that's just wearing all the hats, you end up learning pieces of everyone's job. And that was a surprise to me, but I think it's really useful now that I'm going into bigger things where it's like, if the line producer starts talking about scheduling or costing, I'm like, oh, I know how that works because I've done it granted on a much smaller scale, but like I get the idea. So when you're dealing with a client who's not in the showbiz world, you have a lot more authority than you might think you do.
Yeah, because sometimes they don't even notice the things that you would ordinarily notice.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say then that you were of the mind of say yes early on and then figure things out after
Yeah,
the fact? Okay.
for
Yeah, because
sure. Definitely one of those. If I were an actor, I would be that like, of course I can ride a horse, and then go, shit,
right.
I gotta learn how to ride a horse really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me. I was actually working as a set PA on a feature film in my early 20s, right out of college, and it was a period film. And the
Mm.
one of the background extras had said, "Oh yeah, I know how to drive this year uh, vehicle," and she didn't, and so she goes careening through an intersection right past me as because I'm in charge of kind of locking down traffic and
Oh my
getting
God.
make sure that extras are walking where they should be, and she just comes careening down through this intersection, crashes into some bushes, and people come running. Thankfully she was fine, everybody was fine, nobody was injured. It was scary at the moment, but just kind of I've always remembered that, thinking, oh yeah, well, got to be careful. I mean,
Yeah. Make sure you
there's a
actually,
limit to that.
yeah. Don't put people in. Make sure you actually know what you're doing before you study the thing before you have to be accountable for it. Because, yeah.
Yeah, because I was in the freelance world for about 10 years, and I kind of had the same mentality. Like, let me just say yes to this because I needed the cash, right? And I needed the
Yeah.
client. Let me say yes, and then let me just reach out to people that are more knowledgeable than me,
Yes.
bring them in to help me figure it all out. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on there. Say yes, figure it out, bring people in that know more than you do.
I'm a big fan of mentorship, and I feel like I just saw somebody today, I think on X, talking about like, well, yeah, but I would need a mentor for that, and they're hard to come by. And I'm like, no, they're not. We all want to be asked. It's like
For sure.
people want to be asked for like, how would you do this? Like I went to this directors symposium last month, and like, there was a couple amazing assistant directors that were talking about stuff, and I'm like, mental note, when I am next in a situation, I'm going to reach out to that person because she really knew what she was talking about, and I'm going to just say, here's where I am in my project, like what would you recommend for X, Y, and Z, and maybe end up working together even. But like, there are so many people who are so good at so many things, and I think for the most part people are happy to share. I mean, not if you're being really annoying and like, here, do my job for me. But like, if you're coming from a place of like, help, someone helped you, help me in that same way, I think people are more than happy to be asked to be the expert. Like, it feels really nice to know that you're the expert that someone's coming to.
Mentorship is the whole reason why I'm doing this stuff. Like the reason I have this podcast, the reason I post things online, the reason I write things is all in that same goal of like there's somebody out there that's going to have a question about something, and
Yeah.
hopefully I can step in and help that individual. I have a funny story. I've been blogging since like 2005, and I remember several years ago a coworker had to troubleshoot some issue with our editing software, did a Google search, and a blog article that I had written popped up, and it helped him
Amazing.
solve his problem. He was like, "Hey, Clint, I came across your website, and it helped you fix my problem." So it was kind
Amazing.
of funny, yeah, yeah. Because I remember when I was in high school playing around with my dad's VHS camcorder, I didn't have YouTube to go and find tutorials.
Nope, it was all
I didn't
trial and error.
yeah, yeah, we didn't have an online course like Pagecraft or things like that and I was just desperate to have somebody to kind of mentor and look up to. So I'm hoping that I can kind of pass what I've learned, the little bit that I've learned, on to somebody else.
Yeah. No, I think that's really valuable.
I saw your short film Washed Away,
Oh yeah, thank you.
and I it was beautiful, looks great. So if you're listening to this, look it up because you can watch it online. But I also went to the Washed Away website and just kind of looked at some of the behind the scenes stills and production stills, and I saw all the captions, and I was just curious because there was a shot of you on the phone on a road, and it says Director
Yep.
Heidi on day two during a road closure. So I was like,
Yep.
oh, there's got to be a story here when you talk
Oh my
about
god.
pivoting and little mishaps and things that happen. So maybe tell us a little bit about Washed Away and
Oh
maybe
gosh.
some of those
Sure.
little mishaps that happen that kind of illustrate what you're talking about.
The thing about naming, don't name your movie Washed Away and then wonder what Mother Nature is going to have in store for you. It's a film that's set on a beach. And there's no dialogue. And my friend Paul, who stars in it as Picasso or the spirit of Picasso, wrote it. Well, it was his idea. He was just had this kind of very prose, here's this thing I wrote. And I was like, I would love to direct this. It doesn't really need a script because it's just ideas. So I storyboarded it and handed it to an actor friend of mine, Darren, who stars as the artist. It had to shoot on a beach, and we didn't have any money, but we were trying to figure out. We talked with the park ranger, the people that run the parks in Ventura County, because we're like, that's where we'll go, that's where we'll shoot, because Paul lives really close to there. And Paul called me about a week before we were supposed to do the final scout and was like, hey, so the beach near my house, there was that storm yesterday and it's gone. He's like, it's just rocks. There's no sand. And we were like, oh my God, because as you've seen, the movie involves drawing in the sand. So that was a problem. So we pivoted, went back to the parks people, and we're like, we need a new place. Where can we shoot? And so they were like, well, this place down the way a little bit has it's a campsite. It's great. They've got bathroom facilities. You'll be able to use that. And we were like, okay. So we signed our permits to use that beach. Show up the night before, scout it with sunset. It was gorgeous. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this shot over here. We're gonna do this shot. We kind of like did our plan with the DP. We had all of our plans. Show up. It starts raining. Rains all through the night. We show up the next morning as the park rangers are evacuating the campsite because they're like, the whole thing has flooded. You cannot use the space. And I was like, I have my actors, I have my crew. I can't afford to pay them for another day. Like, we have to do this. And he was like, look, there's another beach that's like a couple miles down the way. It has no facilities, like nothing, but you guys can have it if you want it. So we ended up driving down there, and that's where that picture of me is from. And the road was closed. We guerrillaed the whole thing. I mean, it was just, we had permission to use it, officially permitted, but like people were walking through, like, and they were annoyed that we were like, can you not walk through the shot right now? Like, it was the whole thing was just like, how do we manage this? So it was like our third beach. The other two had washed away, and just making it work and having a crew that was just so sort of down to play because we had no bathroom. So we're like, if you need to go to the bathroom, you either have to like get in your car and drive to a cafe or like just walk behind that dune and hopefully that's fine. And like, like we all just made it work. And I think so having a really willing crew that'll follow you into a fire is a really important piece, but just being willing to just, all right, it's not going to look like this, it's going to look like that, and that's fine. Like on the thing I just directed, the actor was supposed to show up with a really nice like tuxedo suit, and that was going to be the thing he was going to wear for a bunch of the short. He showed up and he goes, oh God, I forgot my suit. And I was like, oh my God, what are we couldn't, like, there was no time for him to go back home and get it. We only had the location for a few hours. And so just a couple of the crew people were like, well, I have this jacket and I have these slacks. And like, we just cobbled together. It's like, it doesn't look like a tuxedo, but it looks like a funky Silver Lake, hipster outfit that I guess works. Like, it's like you just have to be willing to pivot and jump and find the truth of the story another way.
I remember doing a short almost 10 years ago now where and we had no continuity person, we had no wardrobe person, and we had a shot, an exterior scene that we were doing, and my actor comes in the suit and I didn't think anything about it. And then after we filmed it, we started looking at the previous footage that we already gathered from the interior scene, which in the story of the film happens right before this exterior shot. And he was in a completely different suit
Oh no.
from moving from inside to outside, and it was a gritty, serious, dramatic crime, mafia drama.
Wow.
So what we ended up doing was during the edit we did an ADR because in the interior scene he actually kills the mob guy, kills a dude, and so our main character is then we have a reaction shot of him reacting to the carnage off screen that we never do see. So we went back and ADR'd where the guy in the suit talked about, oh, this mess that he just made. There's blood everywhere.
Gotta change.
Go grab me that, give me my change of clothes or whatever. So we
Awesome.
had to, so we had to like, and that's the thing, like you were saying about clients and others, like you'd be surprised at what viewers don't pick up on
Yeah.
or don't notice, and you think to yourself, oh gosh, we made that work,
Yeah.
even though he's in a completely different suit from inside to outside.
Yeah. I love that stuff. It's the magic of filmmaking. So
Yeah, it's
fun.
just this great big puzzle, or maybe like a Jenga tower, and you just hope that you
Yeah.
don't pull the wrong piece out at the wrong
Yeah.
time. So, in other just along these lines about either washed away or other things that you've directed or worked on, just anything that comes to mind that you can think of where things got a little dicey or things went a little crazy and kind of things that it taught you for the next project, things
Yeah.
that helped you in your career.
Well, I think the thing we were talking about on X is that just the getting it in writing thing. Like, I've had so many experiences now where even with a friend, it's like I trusted them. It's not necessarily even that people are out to like do you dirty. It's just that they thought you meant one thing and you thought you meant something else. And so even if those things are similar, like all the heartbreak I've had has been because of that, because we just somehow there was a communication breakdown, or I understood one thing and they understood something else, or, you know, it just, it's so much easier to just get it in writing, even if you're just doing like a memorandum of understanding, or, if you go on the WGA West website, which you can go on as a civilian, you don't have to be a member. There's all these boilerplate agreements that you can download and adapt to your purposes. And it's so easy if you just make that little bit of an effort to protect yourself or to make sure you're on the same page. And it's just, to me, it's that sometimes it's hard to have that conversation, but it's so worth it. Like, sometimes there's that fear of like, oh, but you're my friend. And if I'm like, hey, Clint, would you mind signing this? You'd be like, what? You don't trust me, or like whatever. Like, but the more I get into this, the more people are just like, oh yeah, of course, let's just sign something. And
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
has
for
saved
sure.
me. It has saved me a couple times. And every time that something's gone wrong, it's because I didn't. And I'm like, this would have been so solvable. Like, I just did this thing where I had been producing on this project for several months, and I had done all this stuff in the producing capacity, brought in a friend, convinced the other producer to hire this person to be another producer on the team to handle like the logistical stuff and like the union stuff and the agreements and the insurance and all that side of things. Great. So in my mind, we're three producers working together, and then I happen to also be the director. Well, in his mind, he was the producer that came in to produce. So when it came at the end to like who gets what credit, he was like, "Well, you don't get a producing credit," and I'm like, "But I produced it." And it just it's just like, it would have been so easy to just at the beginning go, "Hey, let's do a quick memorandum or even an email saying, here's what I understand to be happening right now. Are you on the same page?" And we would have figured out then that he was like, oh no, I'm going to be the sole producer. And then I could have been like, I don't, that's not what I think. Would it work for you if this is like we could have hashed it all out at the beginning. And because we were all friends, the sort of, and we shot this thing so quickly and so kind of frenetic that our getting agreements in place kept getting pushed to the side. So this didn't come to light until it was too late. And then feelings were hurt, and it's just like, oh, this was so avoidable. So, yeah, get it in writing.
Yeah, I think people are afraid to, like you said, broach that subject off the top,
Yeah.
especially with a friend, because they think that it's in somehow going to be detrimental and hurt the friendship in some way.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, it's obvious that if it's better to do that stuff up front and get it in writing, like you're saying, because the alternative is going to be far more detrimental to the
Yeah.
friendship.
Like for another example, like I had done an agreement with a friend who hired me to write a comedy pilot for him, based off of a character that he had created. And I wrote this comedy, and we had in our agreement said that I'm the writer. That it's technically we build it as a co-write, which technically by WGA rules wouldn't actually be the case. I'm the writer. We would both have a story by credit if we're being technically correct. But I had said you can have a co-write credit because I didn't know any better. And but my name comes first. Like that's the one thing I did. Like my name comes first because I'm the writer. And he agreed. We have everything in writing. When we came to do a staged reading for some producers to see if this was going to be a thing we could go forward with, he handed out scripts that had his name first, and I was like, "What is this?" And he was like, "Well, I'm the star. I'm the reason people are coming. My name should be first." I'm like, "I see your point. However, our agreement states," and I was able to like fall back on that. And he was like, "Oh, right." So there was no argument. There was no hurt feelings. It was like, this is what we've agreed to. So then the next reading that we had, my name was first. And I was like, that is correct. Thank you. So
So,
just kind of like,
right.
yeah, simple.
So for those that are listening that maybe that are unfamiliar with WGA and kind of
Mhm.
how credits work, so in this world, why is it important? What is the significance of who gets what credit first?
It's yeah. So WGA is the Writers Guild of America. There's a couple branches. There's WGA West for us here in Los Angeles, and there's East in New York and on the East Coast. But the point of the guild is that they're there when you do get your professional job, that you can't be taken advantage of because the guild is behind you and the guild is backing you up as to the rules of what you get paid, how much you get paid, when you get paid, and credits and who gets what credit. So it's all there's a bunch of rules. They're all there. You can find them on the site. But credits matter because that's you building your resume. That's you building your credibility as an artist in the industry. If I don't get a credit as a producer and when I have done the job and someone else is looking at maybe to hire me to do the job and I can't prove by saying, yeah, I have this credit, then they're like, well, why should we believe you? So if I'm getting a credit as a writer, this is written by me versus written by me and somebody else. There's a little bit of like, well, but how much did you actually do? And so versus if it was just written by me and then story by both of us, which is technically what should have been correct. It tells anybody looking to maybe hire me as a writer that, like, yeah, this I worked with somebody maybe on hashing out the idea, but all the execution on that you're seeing on the page is mine. So it's just building credibility, and it's building, it's how you build your career.
So you were interviewed by canvasrebel.com,
Oh yeah.
and you were talking about shopping a project around for years, and then or you had been working on a project for years, but then you had a partner that shopped it around behind your back without
Hmm.
credit. I'm curious if you are comfortable elaborating on the story or providing any more details about it for what happened. I mean, obviously you don't have to mention anyone's names, but just curious as it pertains to kind of lessons learned in helping your career, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that project is dead forever, which is really just breaks my heart because it was at that time it was one of the best things I'd ever written. I was really, really proud of it. And that pride and that sense of, oh, I've created something that actually could be something special was what kept me holding on to it for so long and trying to make it okay. That agreement came out of, again, kind of like this last one I was just mentioning, me not understanding my value as a writer and me not understanding my value as an artist. Understanding the function of coming up with ideas, coming up with characters and situations versus executing them on the page. Those are two different things. And I agreed to share writing credit when I was the one doing all the writing. And I didn't understand that like I thought, now I understand those people definitely deserve a story by credit because they helped craft the story, but I did all the writing. And so for me to give away in our agreement that I had with these people half of the story credit, or half of the writing credit, was not correct. And I didn't know any better because I was just like, well, who am I? Who's going to listen to me and my pages? Like, sure, I'll share that with you. I don't, what difference does it make? All rising tide lifts all boats, right? It's good for both of us. And now I know to stand my ground and to be like, yeah, I'm helping you execute your idea, but I'm doing it as the writer. And you will forever be either also on as a producer because it was your idea, or always also story credit and all that kind of stuff, which has its own value. So I think if I had understood my own value as a writer and as a creative and as a creator, somebody who was capable of executing to that level, I would have I would have understood in a different way what I was giving away. And I would not today, I would never agree to that. Today I would never agree to a co-write. Let's just say that. I think we are afraid, like we were saying earlier, we're afraid to ask the question and to ask for an agreement. But I think just letting yourself, like, it sounds lazy, just don't be afraid. But, just to ask the questions like, okay, well, what do you think? What are you think when you say co-write? Do you mean you're going to be executing pages? Am I writing and then you're giving notes? Or am I writing and then you're doing a pass and then I'm doing a pass and you're doing a pass? Like, what does that mean? And maybe they would, you could clarify like, oh, so you're just going to give me notes and then I'm going to keep writing it. Oh, that sounds like a story by, not a co-write to me. But what is that to you? Like coming in, being willing to ask the question, not make demands, but ask the questions and like be curious. What do they mean by it? And I think if you can just help the two of you together can explore what the meaning is and then agree, you're both agreeing from a place of feeling heard and feeling like you're getting your needs met instead of like, well, I guess I'll just agree to this because I am afraid not to, which is going to lead to you feeling terrible later.
Yeah, and I know that in my own life, just not just professionally, but personally, I do have a problem with making assumptions sometimes.
Yeah. Don't assume anything. That's the big flag for me is like, what's a great practice is that thing where you send the email after. Like, we had this great conversation, following up, here's the points we touched on, here was my understanding, and the going forward, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, we agree, right? That clarifies things so much. And the one time, so the one time I got pushback on that was somebody, I sent that email just to make sure we're all on the same page. And the person pushed back and said, who does this? Who sends an email like this? Only someone who's going to try to sue somebody sends an email like this. And then guess what they went on to try to do? So it's like, oh, okay, it's only a red flag if you're going to try to pull a fast one.
Yeah, they're
So
hoping that you didn't make note of
yeah,
all those
hoping
those
that
points.
that I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
So I feel like, this business is such a weird blend of like, you have to go into things open-hearted and trusting, and then you have to cover your back. You have
Mhm.
to do your due diligence and just take care of yourself because no one else is going to do it. No, the cavalry is not coming to save you. And I think that knowledge has helped me get so comfortable with the discomfort of saying, hey, I feel really, really weird having to even talk about this, but can we have a conversation about just what we're agreeing to and make sure we're on the same page? Like, that will save you so much heartbreak later because assumptions are going to kill you every time. And hoping it works out for the best in your favor, people will take advantage. Like, they just need, even not out of a mean place. Like, sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. And it's just, I have done so much free work thinking, oh, but they're going to see that I did all this work and then they're going to pay me, right? It's like, it does not work that way.
So I'm curious. I always like to find out from people maybe when that moment was for them, where they kind of like the lowest moment, where you felt that self doubt that creeps in that says either I'm not good enough or why am I still doing this or this was not the right avenue for me. And I'm curious if you ever experienced anything like that and maybe kind of what
Oh,
got you through
sure.
it.
I mean, I think often, there's often that you have those. I don't know. There's several moments. I think one of the moments was when I ended up leaving a little bit because not, I ended up getting sucked into another company that was a nonprofit that I was really passionate about the work they were doing. And I ended up really giving them all of my energy. and not doing filmmaking stuff. And finally I was just like, what am I doing? And that was like, that, why did I even move here if I'm not doing the thing I came here for? So like that was kind of a weird moment. The other one was, I think, just this thing I was talking about, where like that was a culmination of about 5 years of work, of a very, like, a bunch of different projects, like this whole raft of things that all died because of that person shopping stuff behind my back and having taken my name off of it, even though I wrote them. So that was a real heartbreaker. And it just made me kind of go like, I've spent so many years working on this. How do you trust people again? How do you, what can I, and so finally I was just like, okay, it didn't happen in a vacuum. I was taking advantageable of, or whatever. I was somebody that was susceptible to that, or this wouldn't have happened. Right. So I think there was just a certain amount of like leaning to like, yeah, there is no one coming to save me. I need to make sure I'm doing my due diligence, and I'm not jumping in because I'm so passionate about it before I go, yeah, I'm super passionate about it. Are you going to pay me? Are you going to give me credit? What are we doing? What are we doing here? Because I don't have the time or the bandwidth to just do this out of the goodness of my heart, because I have 20 other projects that are mine, that are near and dear to me, that I'm also pushing at all times. So if I'm doing your thing, there has to be, now I'm much more willing to stand up and make sure that I'm valued. So those moments of the couple, but when that group of projects died, I was just like, oh God. Because, I hadn't been writing any other things for several years. So it's like, I have to start over.
It's those rookie mistakes that sometimes we still make, even as veterans,
Yeah.
that are because I've done the same thing on shoots where I'll make some sort of mistake that you learn not to do in your first film class.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I'm thinking, I've been doing this for 25 years. Like, how could I still be doing that?
I think part of it is, how quickly can you short circuit the beating yourself up part? How much, what do you need to do that? Is it a weekend with friends? Is it, a really good meal? Is it just a day to like stay in your bed and be real mad? Like, what is the thing that you need? Like, and like, can you just give yourself that grace to be like, we all screw up. This is a bizarrely complex thing we're trying to do, and it's almost impossible to remember every single aspect all the time of all the things. So you're going to make stupid mistakes that you knew better 20 years ago not to do. It's like, there's that. And then just like, how can you process your own, get okay with yourself, grant, forgive yourself, give yourself the grace, and then move forward with like, okay, what can I learn from this? And how can I do better next time? What would I do differently next time? And just developing the facility to move through that faster and faster.
And the one thing I tell folks is that you're never alone in that moment,
Yeah.
because that's the one thing that when you mess up like that, you feel like you're the only person in the world that has ever dealt with that problem that you're
Yeah.
dealing with, and you feel so alone. And I know that when I've messed up, I do need to talk to others. I do need
Yeah.
those people to say, "Listen, this happens to everybody." On the flip side of that, maybe talk now about your proudest moment that you've had in your career, and anything that taught you.
Well, I was gonna say, part of the feeling like you're the only one is like, that's why I'm a big fan of like meetups and
Mm-hmm.
and mixers and networking things for film people, because it is so good to just sit with people that understand this thing you do, and you can kind of commiserate and like lift each other up, because there is so much like, you go home for Thanksgiving and you're talking with your family, none of whom are in film, and they don't know what the heck you're talking about, and they don't get it. They don't understand why the camera not being there is a problem. Like they don't get it in the same way. So it's like, they can be like, sweetheart, of course it was good because you did it. And like, gold star from mom, but like, having the people, like, that's why I host the East Side Writers meetup here in Los Angeles, because just being able to have people talk to each other and build that kind of camaraderie and community is so important. So that's one thing. Um, Moments I've been proud. I mean, they're mine and they're my clients. Like, one of my earliest clients from 2013 just won her fourth Emmy, and like, she now teaches for me. And it's just like every time I see her success, it's my success, you know? So I'm just like, I'm so proud of her. And I'm so excited for the circles she's getting to move in and like, take me with you. Like, tell me what it's like. So we have breakfast like once a month where we'll just do a whole breakdown, and we now exchange, you know, now we're peers, and we exchange work to read and share and give feedback. And it's like, that to me, that is a success for me. I always like to say success in this town is failing at higher and higher levels. So, you know, it's like I've gotten projects all the way up the chain at CAA, which is one of the big talent agencies. I got in the door. I had a series of meetings with Netflix on a project a couple years ago, and then they were gung ho on it. And then that guy that had that division that really liked it got fired, you know? So it was just kind of like, cool. And, you know, I had some big Disney producers involved on a thing for a while, and they were super excited. We were developing it. And then one of them got very ill, and the other one's husband got very ill. So they both had to drop out. And I was just like, cool, you know, like, but 10 years ago, I wouldn't have gotten in the door at Netflix or with Disney producers, or, you know, so it's like failing at higher levels is like, that is success in this town. And it's this bizarre thing where you're like, yeah, I do this thing. And people are like, well, what have you done? I'm like, I can't point to anything. All I can tell you is that it is going well because I'm up here falling on my face now instead of down here falling on my face now. So that's just kind of weird. I'm super proud of, you know, my scripts and my one of my biggest winning scripts just won final draft. It's a finalist this year, and that's the script I got signed for. And so just there's this stuff like I just had a meeting today with a producer on that script. So, you know, things are bubbling and just that kind of stuff where anytime it's like, yeah, I did a thing and the world can see it. It's not just me in my head going, I think I'm good at this. They're saying it, you know? So it's like when every time someone else says it, it's so validating. And
Yeah. I'm going to remember the falling on your face at higher levels. I like that thought.
yeah,
Yeah.
because what else do we have? I mean, one in a million movies actually gets made.
Yes.
So it's like you can't measure yourself on that or you'll just cry all the time. But knowing that, like, you know, you got in those rooms, people like working with you, people, you know, call you on that next job, you know, it's like, it's just that. It's like, that's success. It's knowing that you have a community of people who believe in what you do, who know they can turn to you if they need someone to do that job. Like that's success. It's like, what does your community look like? How does your community reflect you? If your community is a bunch of great, cool creatives that are doing good work, you've succeeded.
I've been listening to this podcast called What Went Wrong, and it's all about how movies get made and
Amazing.
all the behind the scenes stories of movies that are huge box office successes in certain situations. But it's just eye opening for the listener
Yeah.
to just see how miraculous it is that any
It's
movie gets made.
miraculous.
Yeah. It's really good. I recommend listening to it if you haven't checked it out. It's really good.
Yeah, it is. And it's like the fact that we as people have the glut of amazing content that we have at any given day that we can stream is, you know, it's like you don't understand how many tears were shed and how many panic attacks to get that thing that you're watching on the screen in front of you, like all the improbabilities.
Yes, that's why just as a viewer of movies, as a movie lover, if a movie I'm watching is not my cup of tea and I'm into it and I'm thinking I don't know about this one, I still like to try and finish it because just for that reason,
Yeah,
like just to say, okay, this
people worked
somebody
hard.
worked really hard on this movie.
Yeah.
It's not my thing. I don't really like it, but I'm gonna watch it to the end. You
I
know?
always stay in movie theaters till the end of the credits because I'm just
Okay.
like, all those people worked so hard, and it's like it's so rude of me to just get up and walk out and like, but I wouldn't have gotten to see like Sarah Chowdhury down in the second PA to the second PA. Like, good for her, you know. It's like,
I do
yeah.
that sometimes with my dad because my dad is a CPA. So I'll say, Dad, look at all the accountants. Look at all the people that are
So my
in the
uncle, like
financial
my
part of
uncle,
this film.
yeah, my uncle's an accountant on films, and he's just like, you know, I'm like, yeah,
Okay.
look at that. We couldn't do it. You couldn't do any of it without all of it. If I think if I had known how many different jobs I could do in film at a much younger age, I probably would have been out here 20 years earlier and done a bunch of different things.
Think about people like James Cameron who came up just painting, doing matte paintings,
Yeah.
and learning that.
Paintings,
And now, yeah.
running craft services, being the onset. One of my friends now she's an onset medic. You know,
Hmm.
being the person that might creates all the props, the prop master, the locations master, the lighting people. And there's just so many ways of being involved and making a huge difference. That like, yeah, you might not be the director that everyone's looking at, but you're doing this really important piece. That's like, yeah, if they didn't have their costumes, we couldn't do it. We need the person that does the costumes.
I may be backtracking a little bit, but I'm gonna kind of put a wider lens on this whole thing when we talk about low points and we talk about persisting and pushing through. I'm just curious for someone who is in LA and someone who has been in the industry for a while, just about the state of production in Los Angeles, and for all those people that are in fact struggling and or maybe they are in a low point right now. Do you have any just kind of general commentary on kind of what you're seeing from where you are?
It is rough right now. I heard something earlier, and this was like maybe 6 or 7 months ago, so I'm not sure how much has changed. But I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but I'm just going to throw them out. It was something like in a given year, there's about 84 TV productions at any given time in Los Angeles. There's like different shows that have been bought or put into greenlit by various streamers and the networks and all that. There are currently something like 30. So it's like the amount of work is much smaller. That being said, all I've been hearing lately, I just got back from Austin Film Festival and everybody was saying spec scripts are starting to sell again. So people are now going pivot to feature. If you only have TV pilots, consider writing a feature. That's where things are right now. Who knows? I mean, I feel like all of this is nobody ever knows anything. And it's like no point chasing trends because by the time you get there, it'll be something else. I do know that work has gotten a lot scarcer around here. I know people who have left, who've just given up and moved back home to wherever to do some other job. So it is a privilege for me to be here and to know that like it is a game of attrition. And if I'm the one who's still standing when the music stops, it's like I'll be the one that gets hired because I'm still here. So there is some of that. But yeah, a lot of it for me is just like, well, I never had a studio job, so I'm not missing a studio job. I'm like in the same place I always was, which is figure out how to do it yourself. So, I mean, that's where I'm right now. I'm working on setting up a feature for me to direct next year. I'm just trying to put that together, which is the same thing I would have been doing anyway. So, just depends on where you're looking at it from, I guess.
Well, it's been a fast hour.
It has.
First of all, thank you so much. I've loved meeting you and talking with you, and I think this has just been great. And I never want to end without having my guests plug anything that they want to plug, talk about, promote anything that they're doing. I'm a shameless self promoter.
I love
So,
it.
where can people find you? What are you working on? What's happening?
Oh, thank you, Clint. Pagecraftwriting.com. That's all of our online classes, all of our labs, workshops, seminars, all that kind of stuff, and just one-off services and coaching for, script feedback and coaching and all that kind of stuff. So that's that. I'm everywhere at Heidi Hornbacher on X and Blue Sky and Instagram and LinkedIn and blah, blah, blah. And likewise, Pagecraft Writing. We're everywhere. All of our stuff, we've got scholarships to different things depending. So it's like we really try to bring community together, build people up. Like I said, for any listeners in Los Angeles, I host the East Side Writers Meetup that happens about once a month. So just always trying to find ways to bring writers together.
And if you want to go to Italy, definitely get on
Go to
with
Italy.
Pagecraft for sure.
Yeah.
Heidi, great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Clint. Anytime.
And that was my conversation with Heidi Hornbacher. Again, I'm so thankful that she spent an hour of her time with me to talk about her career experiences and the things that she's doing and the things that she's learned throughout her career. As always, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get podcasts. I hope you will. I hope you will leave a review. I hope you'll share it with someone you know and encourage them to listen as well. You can subscribe to this written newsletter at clinttill.substack.com, where I continue to write my own personal stories of my career in film and video production. You can see everything that I'm doing online at linktree.com/clinttill. You've been listening to the Persistence of Vision podcast.